You're something beautiful, electric chemical. You take my breath away, feel my emotions push and pull. Shooting stars in your eyes, you're bringing me to life. Love how you say my name, you make it feel like summertime. When you reach out your hand, I find myself again. Electric wonderland, no, I just can't get enough. You feel like magic, magic. Just one touch, my God, I gotta have it. You feel like magic, magic. You know you feel like magic. You know you feel like magic. You know you feel like magic, magic. Dance in the living room, can't stop looking at you. The way you're moving, I'm watching all of my dreams come true. Take all my stress away, clear up my cloudy days. Just me and you and all this music, baby, never change. When you reach out your hand, I find myself again. Electric wonderland, no, I just can't get enough. You feel like magic, magic. Just one touch, my God.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And again, today is Sunday. This is a holiday weekend. It is an honor to be able to join you all and to share some of my thoughts and opinions, frankly, heavy-weighted opinions on this whole situation with the LUMIX S1 Mark II. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm excited to share my perspective, give you guys sort of a couple of analogies of how it is that I'm thinking about this whole situation, give you my perspective on how YouTubers, influencers, and everybody who got the camera ahead of time are positioning some of their videos, what that means, whether you should or shouldn't have FOMO, and more importantly, try to bring a little bit of balance to the conversation. Because like you, I've also binge watched a ton of LUMIX S1 Mark II content. And maybe some of the things that I'm interested in, you're also interested in. I can tell you that image quality wise, as we've all said now for multiple years, every single camera can get you the image that you need based on your delivery. And that now it's just a matter of choosing the tool that is going to allow you to have the workflow or the lifestyle or both that you need to be able to accomplish what it is that your goals are. I've gotten a couple of DMs and a couple of, I guess, text messages. Well, 3 text messages and maybe a handful of DMs asking me about this sweatshirt. It's Uncensored, which is Brandon Washington's live show, which he has every single Friday at 11 a.m. And if you haven't caught one, I'm thinking you've been under a rock, but I'm assuming you've caught him. But if you haven't, you need to make time to make sure you don't miss them. I'm wearing this t-shirt because I am a fan. So my opinions are my opinions. I just happen to be a fan of his show, which is the reason why I'm wearing his sweatshirt. And also, shout out to Jarrell. Appreciate you, brother. And thanks for representing Canon. Okay, so here's the bottom line, right? You all know, and you know me for years and years and years, that I've either shot on Canon primarily, I've dipped my toe into the Sony world, and I decided that was not for me. I've dipped my toe into the Arri world, more on a personal side than on a professional side. And again, that's a lot of money to have tied up on a personal investment side. So I decided that was not for me. And I've gone headfirst into red. And that is primarily where I spend the majority of my time, where Canon supplements my reds or my red packages. But the video today is about LUMIX, and it's about the LUMIX S1 Mark II. And the reason why the S Mark I II made it onto my radar, as in something that I might be interested in, really is because of Arri Log 3 or Log C3. The idea, I'm going to take a step back. So before Nikon purchased red, of course, you all know I was, and I still am, 100% very much invested, but then also there isn't anything in the red camera, maybe autofocus if I had to be picky, that could be improved. So I was very much in the red world, and I love it. It's allowed me to accomplish a lot of everything that I've ever wanted out of this career and build a complete company around it. Obviously, it started with Canon for me, and that is what opened my eyes to the possibilities. And then I scaled up or leveled up and moved into the red side and instantly saw a gigantic explosion of growth for my organization, which is the reason why this is the space that I was in. So LUMIX came into my radar with the announcement of Arri Log C3. This idea of camera companies collaborating and creating tools that are closer to what we all want in terms of use and workflow is super interesting to me, simply because it shows that the camera manufacturers are understanding that we are working within a very competitive space where the middle class of filmmakers, content creators, cinematographers, videographers, and so on, that space is shrinking. And they're trying to give us tools that allow us to more effectively and at a much faster rate deliver volume, high quality volume, not this race to the bottom, lowest possible, whatever type volume, but good quality volume that we've all over the years have either invested in or worked towards or admired or all of the above, and now find ourselves in. So back to my story about before red was sold to Nikon. There was a live stream where Jared mentioned that in the future, we should expect a lot of other manufacturers to work together to create the type of tools that we all have been asking for and need in a way that is also affordable. What I didn't know at the time when I was watching that live stream is how much Jared was foretelling of what it is that was happening. What I did see in the background, which he did not mention clearly because of agreements and so on. I'm saying clearly, I'm speculating. Let's be honest, right? Nobody's going to come and tell me, hey, this is why I'm doing X or Y or Z. That's not how it works. But I'm speculating that while Jared made that comment, and then he finished off or rounded off that comment about how DJI essentially has a lot of different technology departments that can bring together items or tools that other companies simply don't have that investment in research and development or expertise in, right? Like DJI, I mean, is there a better drone than DJI? Let's be honest. I don't know. I'm going to say no, because all the ones that are accessible to me, from the very cheap consumer ones to the ones that will fly my red, they've been DJI for me at this point. So Jared is sort of giving us in this live stream, which is now over a year ago, a glimpse into the future. While at the same time, we're all seeing BTS footage and also these weird mashup collaborations where Ari hired Red Digital Cinema to create a camera that was very specifically used to shoot Tron, the movie Tron, which should be out here in the near future. So Ari, who makes these incredible cameras that a lot of people and a lot of industry professionals are very comfortable with, the workflow, the colors, the way that it treats highlight roll-off, the dynamic range, the way that media works, the codecs that it captures in, and on and on and on and on, industry standard Ari cameras, the company hires Red Digital Cinema to make a specific camera using R3D to shoot a feature film that they were hired to shoot. Let that sink in for just a second. Around the same time period is when Jared made the comment about how in the future there were going to be more collaborations, and the competitive space or the market itself for this cinema world was going to be, he didn't say this, but I'm going to say it because we've now all seen it, it's going to shrink. Now, fast forward to the LUMIX S1 Mark II, S1R Mark II, S1 E Mark II. I think that's what it is. I don't know about that camera, much about it anyway. And now we have the ability through a license. So it's a paid upgrade, very similar to the way that the GH4 had a paid upgrade to Vlog or whatever it is that they were using at the time. I bought it. So, back in the day type of thing. You can now have Ari Log C3, not just to monitor, but baked in to your image. That's what got my attention, if I'm honest. That alone, because everything else that camera or these different types of cameras can do, with the exception of Open Gate, I already have a tool that can accomplish that. And when I say except Open Gate, I used to own multiple Blackmagic full frame L mount 6K pocket cameras. I don't even know what the correct acronym is for those cameras at this point. And there was a lot to enjoy about the image quality, but the workflow itself, for me, they were used, and this is, I don't know, I'm not a prima donna or anything, but it, the best place for them in my workflow was to be used a little bit like a webcam. And I know that's going to sound a little harsh, but it wasn't that they were webcams, it was that they were used in the podcast studio. So they were terrific at that for me, but they were not awesome at bringing them out and doing a multi-camera shoot with clients, simply because of the way and all the extra rigging up that I had to do or would have to do if I wanted to make sure that I had enough battery life, to cover me for 4 to 6 hours, which is a very normal, typical B2B, which means business to business production. In addition to that, even though the cameras have built-in timecode, you need a dedicated timecode box attached to the camera to make sure that your timecode does not drift. Why Blackmagic does that? I'm guessing it has to do with the price point. So battery life, timecode, and then audio options. The combination of those three things essentially made it so that they were best used as in-studio podcast cameras. And that's what I was doing with them. And that's underutilizing the cameras. If we're all being super, super honest here, that's like a waste. So I never really got to see the benefits or enjoy the benefits of OpenGate. And in this last week's podcast with the Uncensored podcast with Brandon and Jarrell said something that made me reflect on sort of my own journey. And what he basically said was, we're all taught something when we all start our journey, either in photography or on the video side or motion side, right? So stills or motion. And then we sort of hang on to that. And we keep doing that perpetually until we realize it's okay to bend the rules or learn more than what we learned initially. And I think that for me, the idea of reframing, which is something that Jarrell was mentioning, was also something that I never really did. I always thought, and I still to this day believe, that being a filmmaker is not about how much you can do in post, but rather how much you can capture in camera to make the post-production side faster, easier, and less, remove some friction from it, right? Because you have a very clear idea of what the director, if I'm the director, or if I'm the director and primary camera op, so camera A, operator, what it is that I'm trying to do and how it is that I'm interpreting that script or that scene to make sure that the editor and I can communicate more effectively without saying, hey, I'm shooting this super wide and I want you to know, or don't forget to take your mind reading pills, because I expect that your first draft edit is going to be able to read my mind as to what it is that I was doing. I've never been that person. I've always believed that being a filmmaker, working in cinematography, creating content that is motion-based is quite a bit scientific. It should be able to be replicated by someone else if you give them the formula or the script or the details that you used. Which lens, what was the aperture, what were your light ratios, what was your focal plane, how much depth of field did you have, and so on. if somebody understands this, they should be able to very easily recreate a scene. This is not something that we see a lot on YouTube because, frankly, a lot of the people that we see on YouTube either are creating content on their own or they're doing the entire process. In other words, they're doing the script writing, they're doing the set design, they are doing the editing, they're doing the final deliverable and all of the steps in between, which makes it easier if you don't have to communicate with someone else. Because being able to communicate with someone else is what allow you then to take whatever your individual limitations are, in my case, my limitations, my skill set, my perspective, my life experiences, the way that I perceive the world and so on. That is all I can show on any one of my projects. But when I bring other people and I start collaborating, then all of what I just said about me is amplified by everyone else who participates in this project that then helps me create something even better. So enough on that rant. I hope anyway, that I'm making a point for the baseline. So now let's talk about the LUMIX S1 Mark II and what seems to have taken over at least a lot of my feed on YouTube, which happens to be around the topic of the camera overheating. And then also, how come, like no shame, but how come none of I'm switching to, or this is the Sony FX3 killer, or I'm replacing my Sony FX, fill in the blank, or I'm whatever. How come none of these creators talked about it? And I'm walking a fine line with what I'm about to say here, because I'm not interested in offending anyone. I believe that we all need to work together and bring each other up, okay? With the understanding that those people who have the brand relationships, who have the ability to get pieces of gear ahead of time or very, very early so that they can release content, and essentially that is how they make a living. They need to make a living. I completely understand that. But did none of us learn at all from what happened with Canon? Do you all remember the R5 when it was released, right? And marketing gives us these talking points. And then we begin to see a lot of videos pop up with those talking points. 8K 60, 8K 30, 4K at blah, 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 and so on. And very quickly, we begin to see that your camera is going to overheat before you run out of battery. So that's not really a thing. And then Canon puts out a whole bunch of content around why that limitation is there, what it is that's causing that limitation. And then fast forward many more months later, and Canon puts out a firmware update that essentially removes a lot of those limitations. And it feels like to me that some of these people, some of these individuals who had the opportunity to get the camera early on and so on, that did their reviews, that talked about all these things, that talk about how this is the Sony FX3 killer, how I'm going to move away from Sony because Sony is stagnant, and then now I'm getting all these things from LUMIX. hype is needed in marketing. I'm not going to pretend I work in the marketing space. I do commercials for a lot of B2B and B2C clients across the United States. So I'm not going to pretend that there is no need to position a message in the best possible light that is interested or needed rather. But I've also been around several high profile people who make a living talking about gear, who have then said to me, I got Susie Q sending me a Twitter message complaining about X, Y, or Z, and they said they bought that camera because I talked about it on my video. I don't understand people. Well, how can that be possible? How can you not, as a human, understand that if you've worked on building a community, that community likely trusts you. And if you say, I'm getting rid of my FX3 and this is what I'm replacing it with, and now all of a sudden I can't use this new tool in the same environment I was using my FX3 in, how that would be a problem. I feel like somehow that message across all these people who have, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 and more people following them, this disclaimer of, well, the brand sent me the camera and I'm going to send it back, or I bought this camera, or the camera is mine and I'm representing this, in terms of XYZ. That's not enough. Because there are a lot of other people whose job is not to push gear, whose job is to actually go out and get and create content for a client. Whether it be real estate or weddings or interviews or commercials or news gathering or you name it. If it's not a hobby and this is what they need to feed their family, then it would be nice if we got to hear from the multiple sources say, this is what happened to me, this is what worked for me, and before you dive head first, and yes, you should use my affiliate link, just like I have an affiliate link on this video. If you want it, there it is. But just understand that I am suggesting you test for yourself on the types of projects in your geography, in your situations, before you make a commitment and sell all your gear, sell all your lenses, dive headfirst, and realize you made a mistake. Do I think that as adults, everyone should understand that intuitively? The answer is yes. Do I think that everyone does? No. Because the truth is that when I'm talking to my friends, I don't think my friends have anything but the best intentions for whatever it is that they might be giving me feedback on or sharing with me, even if they don't completely understand my situation. Which now leads me to this idea of overheating and where it is that the LUMIX S1 Mark II sits for someone like me who is curious, has been curious, and was brought into the curiosity because of this collaboration with ARRI and bringing their color science into a body that is frankly smaller than my Komodo X. I'm going to use the analogy of a sports car. Okay? So I'm guessing many of you have likely seen the movies Fast and Furious, right? There is a oh God, what is the name of that show? America's Top List, America's Fastest, something like that, on Discovery. So it's a group of people in Oklahoma who, some of them have their own garages. Some have their own garage and they tune other people's cars. Some just build their own cars. And essentially, Oklahoma says they have the fastest cars in the world. They used to say in the United States, but they also then took their vehicles to Australia and they brought a bunch of people from everywhere. I don't want to spoil it, but Oklahoma has the fastest cars. and this group of people have the fastest cars. So these cars are able to essentially run a race, but they can't really run 3 races back to back. And the main reason is that they don't have things like radiators, which are needed to cool down the engine. So they're able to produce an incredible amount of horsepower and get up and down the track in under 7 seconds. But they can only do it once. And do they look badass? Absolutely. But if they had to do it 2 or 3 times back to back, they are using ice-filled radiators, in some cases, to cool down the block so that the block can put out another, they call them licks. So for someone like me, understanding and thinking that it is possible that a LUMIX S1 Mark II may overheat if I take it out of my studio. My studio is typically around 69 degrees Fahrenheit. I have no idea what that is in Celsius. So you guys can do the translation there. But that's what my studio typically sits at. So if I take that camera out of my studio setting and I go into a high humidity or high temperature environment or high temperature and high humidity environment, the possibility that it's going to overheat really means that I cannot go out on a project with one S1 Mark II. I need to go out with 3. Because if you have 1, you're going to fail. If you have 2, at least you have a backup. But if 2 fail, you need to finish the job. So all of a sudden, this price point changes for me, right? Because if the camera is 30, 3,500, 30, let's say 3,000, just to make it easy on the math. Well, 3 cameras are now $9,000. So what it really is doing for me is that it is turning into more of a niche shooting scenario type camera that can do some pretty incredible things. And I need to decide, do I want this type of camera to be sort of like my DJI drone, where it is not used on a regular basis, it is used when needed for that one type of scenario? Or am I okay with investing on multiple cameras? I'll use a different analogy just to bring my point home. And then I want to know what you guys think about this. If you are going out to the dealership and you're going to buy a vehicle that is going to be your daily driver, right? You need the vehicle to get to and from your home and your wherever it is that you're doing business at, whether it's a remote client or you're going into an office every single day. Are you really interested in buying a car that may decide to overheat on you and now you cannot finish your trip to the office, to the client, or whatever? Are you okay with winging it and praying and hoping that when you go to start your car, it's going to start and you're going to make it completely all the way down the block or 3 or 30 miles away, wherever you're going, without needing to stop because your car overheated? And then how many times are you willing on overheating your car before you realize that you're beginning to cause internal damage that is going to be catastrophic for your vehicle? Those are the things that I am juggling in my head, because there are a lot of really tempting pieces of tech crammed into this little tiny body that still makes me interested. But it doesn't make me interested like I'm going to treat it as my A cam. It could never replace any of my Reds, and frankly, it couldn't replace my Canon R5Cs. Here's something that's even more wild that I just literally right now realized. It could not replace my Canon R50V because the R50V does not overheat. It's got other issues. And that's really kind of what I'm saying here. We are all incredibly lucky to be living in the time where so much tech is so awesome. But before anyone dives headfirst into a specific new hot thing, like I'm honestly still considering, understand what those limitations are and how those limitations may affect your workflow, and then always have a backup plan. In the flip side of that same coin, for all the people that have created content that essentially follows the talking points from LUMIX, and I have nothing against LUMIX. It's more of a personal thing with individuals on a one-on-one thing, and not against them, but rather let's evolve that conversation. Let's evolve beyond the talking points. Because back in the day when I used to work with brands, they would send me a list of talking points. They would say, make sure you cover these 3, 5, 7 things about the unit. Ideally in these types of scenarios. And I made sure that I met my criteria, but I also never glossed over or pretended or forgot to mention things that were not positive or not in favor of the talking points that the marketing department decided I should share with you all. And I think that that's the biggest key, because what you need to understand is that when brands work with people, and this is just my experience, okay? So let's take everybody else out of this. When brands in the past chose to work with me, they sent me, this is the product that we'd like you to review. These are the talking points that we'd like covered. You can say and do anything you want, but if you're able to fit into these 3, 4, 5, 6 scenarios, it would be really helpful to us. So and they don't need to see the video before I publish. So while it is true when someone says, yes, I got this piece of gear from a manufacturer or a brand or whatever, and I am collaborating with them and they are sponsoring a section of this video or part of this video or the entire video and so on, and they have nothing to say or do with how it is that I choose to create my product overview or review or whatever people are calling it these days. All of that was true, yet it doesn't mean they didn't provide a set of talking points, which is the reason why these talking points show up in more than one video from more than one person who is working or collaborating with the brand at the time. Everybody gets to spin it any way they want and gets to share it as long as the talking point is brought out or emphasized or showcased or whatever the right adjective is for what I'm attempting to say here. And what I want every single creator to know, every single YouTuber to know, every single artist and filmmaker who shifted away from what they were doing and are now doing full-time YouTube to know, is that when we all see you as our friend, we only think that you have our best interest in mind and why it is that you are suggesting or letting us know what it is that you think we need. And I think that that is super important. I got a couple of messages here or comments. I'm going to bring them up and just read them here. Leafy Greens, a colleague will be shooting a summer beach event with a LUMIX S1 II. I'm sporting the FX3. I will be curious how his will handle the heat. So from what I hear, Leafy Greens, is hopefully he brings more than one camera, because it sounds like if he's going to try to leverage OpenGate and 6K and 60p, he's going to need more than one camera. I think your fan is a must for any video camera. I think this is the part, King, where I'm going to not just completely agree with you, but this is also why I ended up with like a collection of cameras, right? If I know I'm going to shoot video, then a hybrid camera is not the right camera for me. If I know I'm going to shoot hybrid stuff, the R5C essentially is carrying most of that weight for me. Lately, if I know that I'm going to be doing stills primarily, and I may need to do some video, this is how crazy life is. Y'all are going to laugh at me. If I'm primarily doing stills and may do some video, it depends on where that video is going. But if the video is going on social media, then I'm going to bring this. Okay, don't laugh. I'm going to bring a Leica camera for the stills. And then I'm going to bring 2 pieces of gear for the maybe video. One, oh, life. This is how weird the world is. This little piece of gear. And I'm going to use this little piece of gear on my iPhone. And now I have 2 terabytes attached to my, I think it's a 1 terabyte phone, where I can capture Apple log video. That's one piece of gear. The second one is going to be the Osmo Pocket 3. That's, again, if I know I'm supposed to be there to capture stills, but there's a chance I may want video or need video if somebody says, hey, can you do a video for this or that or the other thing? If I'm doing straight up video, then it's either Komodo X, Raptor X, or R5C. No, that's not true, because for corporate work, the Canon C80 has been doing a lot of work. A lot of work. Like last month, we shot well over 500 videos on the Canon C80. So, but that's all that we need to do, right? It was like, that's what we're doing. And then the last comment I'm seeing here is, does the A1 II overheat? And I don't have experience with that camera. And honestly, other than Brian, who goes by the name of Loud and Clear on YouTube, I don't know anyone else who has used that camera to be able to say that. Maybe Gerald Undone knows. I don't know. I personally don't know. So F1 was filmed with the iPhone camera and it looks great. Was it really? I guess I didn't know that, King. That's interesting. But yeah, a lot of the content and a lot of the videos that I shot over in Italy, during my vacation, was shot on this little 2 terabyte SSD in my iPhone. So, and it looks great. You're right. It looks great. Apple Log looks great. So that's really all I had. I just wanted to share, if you're thinking about, if you're about to be influenced or you're thinking you're being influenced, consider this. If you were trying to buy a vehicle and this is going to be your daily driver, are you okay if the vehicle doesn't work all the time? Now, mind you, you're paying top price because it's brand new. So it's 2025 or 2026 if the model was released already for the vehicle you want. Now, it may or may not work all the time. You may or may not get to your destination every time you get in the vehicle. Is that something you want to do? Or do you know for a fact that you're going to be working in an environment where heat is not an issue, humidity is not an issue, and the challenges that might make internal recording at the frame rates and with the crop into the sensor or lack of crop into the sensor that you want, not an issue. Understand your environment before you make your decision. And that's all I got. And I'll catch up with you guys next week. Take care.